What if a city forged by a warrior's ruthless ambition shaped the world you live in today? Imagine a tale so wild it blurs the line between myth and truth, a saga of divine twins, shocking betrayals, and battles so epic they'd make your heart race. Welcome to the story of Rome, a journey from a muddy cluster of huts on the Tiber's banks to a sprawling empire that gripped three continents and left echoes we still feel right now. Buckle up, because this isn't just history. It's a roller coaster of grit, scandal, and cunning that'll leave you wondering how a single city rewrote the rules of civilization. Picture a time shrouded in mystery, where gods meddled with mortals and fate hung on the edge of a blade. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, born to a virgin and a war god, were tossed into a river to die, only to be carried to safety by a twist of destiny. From that improbable start, a city rose, stained by a brother's blood and fueled by a hunger to survive. But how did this scrappy settlement outlast powerful rivals, trick its way to a population, and forge a path to greatness? The answers lie in a whirlwind of daring moves, jaw-dropping twists, and a relentless drive that turned outcasts into kings. Rome's early days were anything but glamorous. Huts perched on a hill, surrounded by hostile Etruscans and Greeks, with barely enough hands to hold it together. Yet, through a bold and controversial stunt, stealing brides from their neighbors, Rome planted the seeds of a society unafraid to break the mold. Kings ruled for centuries, some wise, some war-hungry, building bridges, temples, and a legacy of power, until a tyrant's cruelty and a noblewoman's tragedy sparked a rebellion that changed everything. What drove a people to ditch monarchy for a daring new system? And how did they claw their way up against all odds? And that wasn't the whole story. Rome faced invaders who torched their city, class struggles that threatened to rip it apart, and wars against cunning foes with elephants and fleets. Through every setback, betrayals, assassinations, and battles that left fields soaked red, Rome adapted, absorbed, and grew stronger. Generals turned on their own. A hero crossed a river to ignite civil war, and a clever young man emerged from chaos to seize ultimate power. How did this city, born of myth, stretch its reach from Spain to Syria, shaping laws, roads, and ideas we still lean on today? Hang on tight, because Rome's tale is packed with drama, brothers clashing to the death, women abducted in a festival gone wrong, and leaders stabbed in the heart of their own senate. It's a story of epic victories against impossible odds, of a republic that crumbled under ambition, and an empire that rose from its ashes. The legacy of Rome isn't just in dusty books. It's in the streets we walk, the laws we follow, and the dreams we chase. So, as we dive into this incredible journey, ask yourself, did Rome truly fall, or does its spirit still pulse in our modern world? Stick around, because the thrilling, shocking story of Rome is about to unfold, and you won't want to miss a second of it. Section 1. The Mythic Beginnings. The legend of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers born under impossible odds, kicks off this epic tale. It's a saga drenched in divine whispers, desperate survival, and a brutal twist that left one sibling standing and a city rising from the chaos. Was this the hand of destiny, or just a raw, gritty power struggle? Let's unravel the mystery and find out how Rome's mythic beginnings set the stage for an empire unlike any other. Imagine a time when gods walked among mortals, their influence shaping fates in ways no one could predict. In the ancient land of Alba Longa, a city nestled in the hills near what would become Rome, a princess named Rhea Silvia lived a life bound by sacred duty. She was a Vestal virgin, sworn to chastity to serve the goddess Vesta, keeper of the hearth. But her story took a shocking turn. Legend claims the war god Mars, fierce and unstoppable, appeared to her, some say in a dream, others in the flesh. And from this divine encounter, twin boys were born. Rhea Silvia, a mortal tied to a god, brought Romulus and Remus into a world that wasn't ready for them. Their birth was no quiet affair. It sparked envy and fear in the heart of Amulius, the king of Alba Longa. He'd seized the throne from his brother Numitor, Rhea's father, and saw these divine-blooded twins as a threat to his rule. Determined to snuff out their potential, he ordered them abandoned, tossed into the raging Tiber River to meet a watery end. But fate, it seems, had a different plan. The Tiber, wild and untamed, could have claimed the infants in moments. Picture the scene: a flimsy basket, two helpless babes, bobbing on churning waters under a stormy sky. Yet, against all odds, the current carried them downstream, gently nudging them toward a muddy bank near a hill later called the Palatine. Here, the legend grows even wilder. A she-wolf, fierce yet tender, stumbled upon the crying twins. Instead of tearing them apart, she nurtured them, offering her milk as if they were her own cubs. Some whisper this was no ordinary beast, perhaps a servant of Mars, or a symbol of the raw, untamed spirit Rome would come to embody. Days, maybe weeks passed, until a shepherd named Faustulus, a humble man roaming the hills, spotted this bizarre sight. He scooped up Romulus and Remus, taking them home to his wife, Laurentia, who raised them as her own. These boys, marked by divine origins, grew strong, bold, and fearless. Herding sheep, hunting, and wrestling with a fire in their eyes that hinted at something greater. As young men, Romulus and Remus weren't content to live quietly. They roamed the wild lands, leading a band of rugged followers, outcasts and adventurers drawn to their charisma. Rumors of their unusual birth spread, and soon the truth hit them like a thunderbolt. They were the grandsons of Numitor, the rightful king, cheated by his brother Amulius. Burning with purpose, the twins rallied their crew and stormed Alba Longa. In a swift, daring move, they toppled Amulius, slaying the usurper and restoring Numitor to the throne. The people cheered, marveling at these fierce young men who seemed touched by the gods. But Romulus and Remus had bigger dreams. They didn't want to rule an old city. They wanted to build a new one, a place of their own, on the very banks where the Tiber had spared them. Here's where the story takes a dark, dramatic turn. The brothers, united in purpose, trekked back to the 7 hills near the Tiber, a rugged spot perfect for a new start. They agreed to found a city, but egos clashed over who'd lead it. Romulus favored the Palatine Hill, low and close to the river, ideal for defense and trade. Remus, stubborn and defiant, picked the Aventine, a steeper rise nearby. To settle it, they turned to the gods, using an ancient rite called augury, watching the skies for signs from above. Remus stood on his hill, eyes locked on the heavens, and saw 6 vultures soar overhead, a decent omen. But Romulus, atop the Palatine, claimed 12 birds circled his spot, a clearer sign of divine favor. Did Romulus really see more, or did he bend the truth to win? The mystery lingers, and the argument boiled over fast. Tension skyrocketed as Romulus took charge, marking his city's boundaries with a plow, a sacred line in the dirt no one dared cross. He envisioned walls, huts, a new beginning, and named it Roma after himself. Remus, fiery and unyielding, mocked his brother's efforts. In a bold, reckless taunt, he leaped over the furrow, sneering at the fledgling city's defenses. This wasn't just a prank. It was a challenge to Romulus's authority, a slap to the face of his vision. Furious, Romulus reacted in a flash. Some say he grabbed a weapon, others his bare hands. In a brutal, bloody moment, he struck Remus down, killing his twin, his other half, right there on the hill. As Remus's blood soaked the soil, Romulus stood alone, the sole founder of Rome. Tradition pins this violent birth to 753 BCE, a date Romans later used to mark their history. Was this the god's will? A destined sacrifice to launch a mighty city? Or just a raw human power struggle? One brother's ambition crushing the other. The mystery of Romulus and Remus grips us because it's more than a tale. It's Rome's DNA. Some scholars argue the story's a myth, cooked up later to explain Rome's rough, relentless spirit. No records from 753 BCE survive. The tale comes from poets like Virgil and historians like Livy, writing centuries after. They blended fact and legend, maybe to glorify Rome's roots. Others wonder if there's truth buried in the fog. Twins, or at least leaders, fighting to control a new settlement. Archaeology hints at reality. Digs on the Palatine show huts and traces of life from the 8th century BCE, right when Rome supposedly began. The she-wolf, too, stirs debate. Was she a real animal? A divine sign? Or a symbol? Some even suggest she-wolf was slang for a woman. Perhaps Laurentia, the shepherd's wife, a nurturing outcast who saved the boys. Romulus didn't stop to mourn. With Remus gone, he threw himself into building. He traced his city's edge, a sacred boundary called the Pomerium, and welcomed anyone willing to join. Shepherds, wanderers, even fugitives. This ragtag crew became Rome's first citizens, a bold mix ready to fight for their new home. But a problem loomed fast. Too few women to grow a city. Romulus, ever cunning, hatched a plan that'd spark whispers for ages. He invited the neighboring Sabines to a grand festival, all smiles and hospitality. Then, in a shocking move, his men seized the Sabine women, carrying them off as brides. This wasn't just bold, it was a scandal, a desperate grab to secure Rome's future. The Sabines raged, vowing revenge, but Romulus held firm, blending his people with theirs through grit and guile. This mythic start pulses with questions. Did the gods guide Romulus, planting the seeds of an eternal city? Ancient Romans believed it, tying their fate to Mars and the heavens. They built statues of the she-wolf suckling the twins, a symbol of their wild, divine origin, still standing in museums today. Or was this a human story? Ambition, rivalry, and violence dressed up as destiny? Romulus's slaying of Remus mirrors Rome's future, a city built on conquest, unafraid to spill blood for power. The tale's murkiness only fuels its pull, part divine drama, part ruthless reality. As Rome took shape, that gritty spirit defined it. Romulus ruled as its first king, a warrior leader forging order from chaos. He organized his people, set laws, and fought off early foes, laying a foundation on the Palatine that'd grow beyond his wildest dreams. The year 753 BCE, etched in legend, marked the birth of a city destined to defy odds. But the cost was steep. Brother against brother, a life snuffed out for a vision. And what happened next would shock everyone. Rome, barely a village, faced rivals 10 times its strength, yet somehow turned outcasts into a force to be reckoned with. The mythic beginnings were just the spark. Stick around, because the fire of Rome's rise is about to blaze. Section 2. The Early Hustle. Rome's story didn't start with grand temples or mighty legions. It began with grit, hustle, and a desperate fight to survive. Fresh off the mythic clash of Romulus and Remus, the newborn city was little more than a cluster of mud and straw huts, clinging to the Palatine Hill by the Tiber River. Surrounded by powerful rivals, Rome faced odds that'd make anyone flinch. Yet, through cunning moves, a bold welcome to society's outcasts, and a shocking scheme to steal a future, Romulus turned a ragtag settlement into the seed of an empire. This is the early hustle of Rome, a tale of raw ambition, risky gambits, and a city that refused to stay small. Buckle up, because what happened next would shock everyone. Picture this scene. It's around 753 BCE, and Rome's a speck on the map. A handful of thatched huts huddle on the Palatine, one of 7 gentle hills by the winding Tiber. Smoke curls from crude hearths, and shepherds tend scruffy flocks, their eyes darting to the horizon. This wasn't a city of marble glory. Think mud, sweat, and a constant scramble to get by. The Tiber offered water and trade, but danger loomed everywhere. To the north, the Etruscans ruled with sophisticated cities like Veii and Tarquinii, their bronze weapons gleaming, their trade networks buzzing with pottery and power. These mysterious people had writing, art, and organized armies, everything Rome lacked. To the south, Greek colonies like Cumae and Neapolis dotted the coast, rich with culture, ships, and ideas from a civilization that built temples to rival the gods. Rome? It was a backwater, a scrappy village of farmers and herders, barely a blip between these giants. One wrong step, and it could have been swallowed whole. So how did this underdog even stand a chance? Romulus, now king after his brother's tragic end, knew Rome couldn't grow on grit alone. He had land, a hilltop perch with decent defense, and a river for water. But people? That was the problem. A city needs bodies, warriors to fight, hands to build, families to last. The locals were few, mostly shepherds and stragglers, not enough to hold off Etruscan raids or Greek ambition. Romulus pulled off a move so bold it'd raise eyebrows even today. He threw open Rome's gates, declaring it an asylum, a safe haven for anyone on the run. Outlaws, exiles, debtors, and wanderers from across Italy heard the call. Men who'd fled justice, lost homes, or burned bridges streamed to the Palatine. Thieves, rebels, and the desperate. Romulus welcomed them all. No questions asked. This wasn't charity. It was strategy. These roughnecks brought muscle, cunning, and a hunger to prove themselves. A shepherd named Faustulus might have raised Romulus, but now he was raising a city from society's scraps. This gamble paid off fast. Rome's numbers swelled. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of men ready to swing a fist or a club. They built more huts, cleared scrub, and patrolled the hills, turning a dot on the map into a growing camp. Romulus organized them, setting crude laws to keep the peace, forming bands to guard the edges. Some say he handpicked the toughest for a personal guard, the seed of Rome's future warriors. But here's the catch. These men were mostly, well, men. Women were scarce. Local families wouldn't marry their daughters to a pack of outcasts, and without wives, Rome had no next generation. No kids, no future. The Etruscans and Greeks could laugh at this motley crew, but Romulus wasn't done. He was about to pull off a stunt so daring, so controversial, it'd echo through history and keep Rome alive. Enter the Sabine women, a chapter so shocking it's still debated today. Romulus, staring down a city of bachelors, knew he needed women to secure Rome's survival. Births families, a legacy. That's how you outlast rivals. Nearby lived the Sabines, a tough, hill-dwelling people with villages scattered across the lands east and north of Rome. They had daughters, sisters, and a reputation for strength. Romulus hatched a plan: invite the Sabines to a grand festival, a celebration of the god Consus, all feasting, wine, and goodwill. Messengers rode out, promising peace and fun. Suspicious but curious, Sabine families arrived, men, women, and children, drawn by the lure of a new neighbor's hospitality. The day buzzed with laughter, races, and offerings. Then, at Romulus's signal, chaos erupted. His men, those same outlaws and exiles, surged forward, seizing the unmarried Sabine women. Shouts rang out, fathers fought back. But the Romans, swift and ruthless, carried off their prize. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of women were taken. History's hazy on the number, whisked to the Palatine as stunned Sabines fled in rage. This wasn't a random grab. It was a calculated, desperate bid. Called the rape of the Sabine women in old text, the term rape here meant abduction, not always violence. Though the line blurs in the panic. Romulus insisted his men treat the women with respect. No harm, just marriage. He pleaded with them. Join us, build a life, share our future. Some stories say the women, cut off from home, softened over time, seeing a chance in this rough new world. Others hint at fear, coercion, and broken trust. The Sabines, meanwhile, burned with fury. Their king, Titus Tatius, rallied warriors, vowing to crush Rome and reclaim their kin. War loomed, and Romulus braced his patchwork crew, outcasts turned husbands, against a storm of vengeance. Battles flared across the hills, blood spilled, and Rome's fate hung by a thread. And here's where it gets wilder. The kidnapped women, now wives and even mothers, stepped into the fray. Legend tells of them rushing between the clashing lines. Romans on one side, Sabines on the other. Hair flying, babies in arms, begging for peace. Stop, they cried, pleading with fathers and husbands to end the slaughter. Why fight, they argued, when we're family now? Stunned, the two sides paused. Romulus and Tatius struck a deal. No more war, but a union. The Sabines joined Rome, co-ruling for a time, their blood mingling with Roman stock. This daring abduction, shocking and messy, didn't just save Rome, it transformed it. Women bore children, the population surged, and two peoples fused into one tougher tribe. Was this hustle genius or madness? Romulus's asylum packed Rome with loyal fighters, men with nothing to lose and everything to gain. The Sabine grab, controversial and raw, secured a future. Kids, clans, a city that'd last. Scholars dig into this still. No documents from 753 BCE survive. We lean on Livy, Plutarch, and tales spun centuries later. Some call the asylum a myth, a tall tale to paint Rome as a haven for the bold. Others see truth. Early Italy was chaotic, and refugees might have flocked to a new start. Digs on the Palatine back it up. Pottery, hut traces, and bones from the 8th century BCE show a settlement taking root. The Sabine story? It's thornier. Maybe it's exaggerated. A legend to explain Rome's mixed roots. Sabine names and customs did blend in. Or perhaps it happened, a brutal custom of the time, reframed to glorify Romulus. Rome's early hustle wasn't pretty. Those huts, wattle and daub, leaky and small, sat in a swampy valley, mosquitoes buzzing, floods lapping at their edges. Etruscan cities boasted stone walls and painted tombs. Greeks sailed ships loaded with wine and wisdom. Rome had dirt, guts, and a king who'd kill his own brother to win. Yet Romulus turned weakness into strength. His asylum crew brought raw energy, men who'd rob or raid now built and fought for Rome. He gave them purpose, crude counsels, and a shared dream. The Sabine gamble, risky and ruthless, doubled Rome's size, blending skills and bloodlines. Livy claims Romulus even formed a council, 100 elders, the first Senate, to guide his rule, planting seeds of order. Life wasn't easy. These early Romans scratched out crops, barley, beans, whatever the Tiber's banks would yield. They herded goats, bartered with neighbors, and eyed the horizon for trouble. Etruscans loomed, their bronze spears a constant threat. Greek colonies dazzled, tempting trade, but out of reach. Rome's edge? Adaptability. Romulus took in strangers, turned enemies into allies, and ignored the odds. He armed his men with basic spears, taught them to dig trenches, and led raids to grab livestock or land. Some say he claimed Mars's blessing, rallying his people with divine swagger. By the end of his reign, tradition says 37 years, Rome wasn't just surviving, it was growing, a rough patch of huts with a pulse of power. The hustle shaped Rome's soul. That open-door policy made it a melting pot, diverse, scrappy, ready to scrap. The Sabine clash, shocking as it was, showed Rome's knack for turning chaos into strength. Numbers grew, maybe to a few thousand, and the 7 hills, Palatine, Aventine, and beyond, started buzzing. Romulus, hailed as a demigod, vanished in mystery. Some say a storm whisked him to the heavens. Others whisper his own men tore him apart, tired of his iron rule. Either way, his legacy stuck. This tiny, outnumbered village, fueled by outcasts and a daring theft, defied its rivals. But that wasn't the whole story. Kings rose to build on this, and what happened next would shock everyone. A city of huts was about to dream bigger than anyone imagined. Section 3. The Age of Kings. Rome's early hustle laid a gritty foundation, but now the city's story surges forward with a bold, transformative leap. Enter the Age of Kings, a wild, sprawling era where 7 rulers, each with their own distinct spark, turned a scrappy village into a regional powerhouse that dared to dream big. From the wise and pious Numa Pompilius, weaving sacred traditions to bind the people, to the war-hungry Tullus Hostilius, carving out conquests with fire and steel, these monarchs built Rome's bones. Bridges spanned rivers, drains tamed swamps, and the seeds of a legendary forum took root in the heart of the city. Yet, beneath the growth, tension simmered, boiling over with a tyrant's cruelty, and a scandal so shocking it changed everything. Buckle up. This is the story of how Rome's kings forged a legacy that would echo for centuries, setting the stage for an empire unlike any other. Picture Rome around 716 BCE. Just after Romulus, the founder, kicked things off with blood and cunning. Legend says he vanished in a mysterious storm, or perhaps at the hands of his own men, tired of his iron grip. The city he left behind was still a humble cluster of mud and straw huts on the Palatine Hill, home to a few thousand shepherds, outcasts, and Sabine kin. Smoke curled from crude hearths, and the Tiber River glinted nearby, a lifeline for water and trade. Surrounded by powerful Etruscans to the north and Greek colonies to the south, Rome was a speck, barely holding its own. The people, rough, diverse, and restless, needed a leader to steer them through this precarious start. They turned to a man who couldn't have been more different from Romulus, Numa Pompilius, the second king, crowned around 715 BCE. Numa, a Sabine by birth, was older, calm, and deeply pious, less a warrior, more a sage. Chosen by the Senate, that early council of 100 elders Romulus had formed, Numa took the throne with a mission to tame Rome's wild spirit. Where Romulus thrived on war and hustle, Numa saw strength in peace and faith. He believed the gods' favor was Rome's anchor, and with quiet intensity, he wove a spiritual tapestry to bind the city. He crafted intricate religious rites, ceremonies to honor Jupiter, king of the heavens, Vesta, guardian of the hearth, and Mars, the war god tied to Rome's origin. He appointed priests, called flamens, to lead these rituals, each dedicated to a specific deity, ensuring the Pax Deorum, peace with the gods, kept Rome safe from divine wrath. Numa's vision went further. He created the role of Pontifex Maximus, a chief priest to oversee all sacred matters, a title so enduring it later adorned Roman emperors and even popes centuries down the line. Numa's reforms weren't just spiritual, they gave Rome structure. He built the Temple of Janus, a quirky shrine with a bold quirk. Its doors stood open in war, closed in peace, a rare sight given Rome's future. He also reshaped time itself, tweaking the calendar to a lunar rhythm, adding months like January and February to align festivals and farming with the heavens. Tradition paints Numa as wise, almost saintly, ruling for 43 years until roughly 672 BCE. His reign brought stability. Huts grew sturdier, fields yielded barley and beans, and the population, maybe 5,000 strong, started to believe they were special, chosen by the gods. Rome's rough edges softened, its people united by shared rituals and a sense of destiny. But peace, as Numa knew, couldn't last forever, and the next king would shift gears in a big way. Enter Tullus Hostilius, the third king, crowned around 672 BCE, a stark, fiery contrast to Numa's calm. Tullus was all action, a war-hungry leader with a thirst for glory that burned hot. Rome had settled into a rhythm, but neighbors loomed large. Etruscans with their bronze weapons, Sabines in the hills, and Alba Longa, a city just 12 miles southeast, tied to Romulus's roots, but now a rival. Tullus saw conquest as Rome's ticket to respect, a way to flex muscle and silence taunts. His big target was Alba Longa, a proud city with deep ties to Rome's founding myth. Legend spins a gripping tale. Instead of all-out war, Tullus and the Alban king agreed to a symbolic showdown. 3 Roman brothers, the Hieratii, against 3 Alban triplets, the Curiatii. Imagine the scene. Dust swirling, crowds roaring, swords flashing in a brutal, high-stakes duel. 2 Hieratii fell, but the last, wounded yet cunning, tricked the Curiatii, luring them apart and slaying them one by one. Rome triumphed, and Alba bowed, its people absorbed into Rome's fold, a pattern of conquest and blending that would define the city's future. Tullus didn't stop there. He turned his sights on Fidenae, a nearby town allied with Etruscans and other local rivals, crushing them in swift campaigns. His wars swelled Rome's territory, stretching its influence across the Latin plain. Ruling for about 31 years, until roughly 641 BCE, Tullus forged a legacy of bold, bloody brilliance. Rome was no longer a dot on the map. It was a force, its population creeping toward 10,000, its warriors feared. But his reign wasn't just about swords. It set a mindset: win, then weave the defeated into Rome's fabric. Alba's citizens became Romans, their skills and bloodlines strengthening the city. Tullus's fire burned bright, but his death, some say struck by lightning, others hint at a plot, left Rome ready for a steadier hand. Next came Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, crowned around 641 BCE, a grandson of Numa who blended his ancestors' wisdom with Tullus's drive. Ancus ruled with a steady, practical hand, eyeing both peace and power. Rome's growth demanded more than muscle. It needed infrastructure to match its ambition. The Tiber River, vital for water, fishing, and trade, was a wild beast, flooding huts and cutting off paths. Ancus tackled it with a game changer, the Pons Sublicius, Rome's first bridge. This wooden marvel, built without nails per sacred tradition, spanned the Tiber with timber and rope, linking the Palatine to the Janiculum Hill. It opened routes for traders hauling salt and grain, and for warriors moving fast to defend the West. Ancus's vision stretched further. He founded Ostia, a port at the Tiber's mouth, where ships docked to unload goods from the Mediterranean. Salt flats nearby became a cash cow, fueling Rome's early economy. Ancus wasn't all peace, though. He fought hard, crushing Latin tribes and Sabines who raided Rome's edges, expanding its turf to the Aventine Hill, one of the seven. His 24-year reign, ending around 616 BCE, made Rome tougher, richer, and more connected. The population grew, perhaps to 15,000, as trade trickled in and fields spread. Ancus's bridge and port weren't just practical. They were symbols of a city thinking bigger, ready to roll beyond its hills. His reign laid critical groundwork, taming the land and setting Rome up for a leap toward greatness. Then came Tarquinius Priscus, the fifth king, around 616 BCE, bringing a splash of Etruscan flair to a still rough town. Likely of Etruscan descent, Lucius Tarquinius was a savvy outsider who'd risen through charm and skill. He ruled with bold ambition, launching projects that'd define Rome's identity. Romans loved spectacle, and Tarquinius delivered, starting the Circus Maximus, a massive racetrack in the valley between the Palatine and Aventine. Crowds, thousands strong, roared as chariots thundered, horses kicking up dust in races that fired up the city's spirit. He also began the Temple of Jupiter, Optimus Maximus, on the Capitoline Hill, a grand shrine to the sky god, its scale signaling Rome's growing swagger. But the land itself fought back. Swamps and floods choked the valley below the hills, turning it into a muddy mess. Tarquinius tackled this with the Cloaca Maxima, a monumental drain to channel water from the hills, drying the sodden ground. This wasn't just a ditch. It was a marvel of early engineering, lined with stone, some sections still working today. The drained valley became a gathering spot for markets, meetings, and rituals, planting the seed of the Roman Forum, the future heart of Rome's political and social life. Tarquinius's 38-year reign, ending around 578 BCE, blended Etruscan craft with Roman grit. He fought too, clashing with Latins and Etruscans, securing Rome's borders. His projects, circus, temple, drain, pushed Rome toward urban status, its population nearing 20,000, a mix of Romans, Sabines, and Etruscan newcomers. His death, possibly by assassination, left a city on the cusp of something bigger. Servius Tullius, the sixth king, took the throne around 578 BCE, a man of humble roots. Some whisper he was a slave son, who reshaped Rome's core with quiet brilliance. Ruling for nearly 44 years, Servius was a reformer, not a showman. He gave Rome its first constitution, a system sorting citizens by wealth and military gear into classes for the centuriate assembly, a voting body tied to Rome's army. Rich or poor, every man had a role. Soldiers with bronze armor voted first, but even laborers counted. This wasn't democracy, but it was inclusion, giving Rome a structured spine. Servius built big, too. The Servian Wall, a massive stone ring encircling the 7 hills, Palatine, Aventine, Capitoline, Quirinal, Viminal, Esquiline, and Caelian. Stretching miles, it was a bold shield against Etruscan raids or Sabine revenge, parts of it still standing today. Servius also strengthened Rome's alliances, forming a league with Latin cities to share trade and defense. His reign, ending around 534 BCE, saw Rome's population climb to perhaps 25,000, a bustling hub of farmers, traders, and warriors. His system, citizens as cogs in a military political machine, set Rome up to flex its muscle for centuries. But whispers of unrest grew, and his death, murdered, some say, by his own daughter and her husband, hinted at trouble brewing. Tension erupted with the 7th king, Tarquinius Superbus, crowned around 534 BCE. Tarquin the Proud was a tyrant dripping with arrogance, his name a warning of what power unchecked could do. He built on Servius's work, finishing the Temple of Jupiter, its towering columns and gilded roof a monument to Rome's might. The Circus Maximus expanded, hosting wild chariot races to keep the masses dazzled. But his rule turned dark. Tarquin taxed heavily, forced citizens to labor on his grand projects, and ruled with a cruel edge. Executions, exile, and fear were his tools. He sidelined the Senate, ignored old customs, and alienated the nobility who'd once backed the crown. Rome, now a city of maybe 35,000, chafed under his grip. Whispers of his greed and brutality spread, and the city simmered, ready for a spark. That spark came with a scandal so vile it shook Rome to its core. Tarquin's son, Sextus Tarquinius, unleashed a deed that would end the monarchy. Lucretia, a noblewoman famed for her virtue, was married to Collatinus, a respected Roman. Sextus, drunk on power, forced his way into her home, demanding her submission. She resisted, but he wielded a sickening threat: yield, or he'd kill her and a slave, framing her as unfaithful. Trapped, Lucretia gave in, but the shame consumed her. She summoned her husband and father, confessing the truth through tears, then plunged a dagger into her heart, her blood a cry against tyranny. This outrage, around 509 BCE, ignited fury across Rome. Lucius Junius Brutus, a noble with a hidden hatred for Tarquin, and Collatinus rallied the people, storming the streets. Tarquin's cruelty, capped by Lucretia's tragedy, was too much. Nobles, farmers, and artisans united, driving Tarquin and his family into exile in a blaze of rebellion. The monarchy was torched, gone forever. The Age of Kings, nearly 250 years long, was a roller coaster of grit and growth. Numa's faith gave Rome a soul, rituals, priests, a divine bond that steadied its wild heart. Tullus's wars and Ancus's bridge stretched its reach, while Tarquinius Priscus drained swamps, planting the forum's seed. Servius walled the hills, organized citizens, and built a system to last. Tarquin the Proud's reign, grand yet brutal, ended in chaos, with Lucretia's blood as the final straw. Rome grew from a village of 1,000 to a city of 35,000, absorbing Etruscans, Sabines, and Latins into a vibrant mix. Its ways, religion, war, engineering, took shape. The 7 hills buzzed with life, and the stage was set for a new chapter. The kings had built a powerhouse, but their fall proved Rome craved something freer. And what happened next would shock everyone. A bold new dawn was breaking, and Rome was about to rewrite its fate. Section 4. Birth of the Republic. The Age of Kings pushed Rome from a scrappy village to a rising power, but a storm of tyranny and a shocking scandal flipped the script. We're diving into 509 BCE, where a rebellion sparked by a noblewoman's tragedy toppled the monarchy in a blaze of fury. Out of the ashes rose a daring new system: consuls, a senate, and a bold experiment to keep one man from ruling supreme. Yet trouble brewed fast. Class struggles simmered, and external threats loomed like vultures over the young republic. Buckle up, because the birth of the Roman Republic is a wild tale of revolt, reinvention, and a city bracing for battles on every front. Picture Rome around 509 BCE. Huts and stone walls dot the seven hills. The Tiber flows steadily, and a population of maybe 35,000 buzzies with unease. Tarquin the Proud, the seventh king, had ruled with an iron fist, taxing hard, forcing labor, and crushing dissent. His cruelty set nerves on edge, but the final straw landed with a gut punch. Lucretia, a noble woman famed for her virtue, was married to Collatinus, a loyal Roman. Tarquin's son, Sextus, burned with arrogance and lust, barging into her home one night. He cornered her, demanding submission, and when she refused, he wielded a vile threat: give in, or he'd kill her and a slave, staging it to look like she'd betrayed her husband. Trapped, Lucretia yielded, but the shame tore her apart. She summoned her husband and father, spilling the truth through tears, then drew a dagger and ended her life, her blood a searing call to action. This wasn't just a personal tragedy. It was a spark, and Rome was dry tinder, ready to blaze. Fury swept the city like wildfire. Lucius Junius Brutus, a noble with a sharp mind and a hidden hatred for Tarquin, seized the moment. Alongside Collatinus, Lucretia's husband, he rallied the people: nobles, farmers, anyone with a grudge. Crowds flooded the streets, shouting against the king's tyranny. Lucretia's fate, a banner for their rage. Brutus, cunning and fierce, swore an oath to end the monarchy, and the Romans, sick of Tarquin's reign, roared in support. The tyrant, caught off guard, faced a revolt too big to crush. By 509 BCE, the rebellion hit its peak. Tarquin and his family fled into exile, chased out by a city done with kings. No more crowns, no more one-man rule. Rome was ready to forge something new, a system born from blood and a vow to change. Out of this chaos, the Roman Republic emerged, a bold, messy experiment to block any single ruler from gripping power. The kings were gone, but what now? The Romans, practical and wary, crafted a government to split authority. At the top sat two consuls, elected yearly by the people. Well, mostly the wealthy men of the Centuriate Assembly that body Servius Tullius had shaped. Think of consuls as dual leaders, part generals, part judges, each with the power to veto the other. If one got too ambitious, the other could slap him down. Lucius Junius Brutus and Collatinus stepped up as the first pair, setting the tone: lead, but don't linger. A one-year term kept them in check. No lifelong thrones here. They commanded armies, ran courts, and steered Rome, but always with eyes on each other, a balance born of mistrust. The Senate, that council of elders from Romulus's day, took a bigger role. Packed with maybe 100 to 300 patricians, rich, land-owning nobles from old families. These men weren't lawmakers yet, but their advice carried weight. Consuls leaned on them for wisdom, strategy, and clout, shaping policy in smoky meetings on the Capitoline. The people had a voice, too, through assemblies like the Centuriate. where citizens, grouped by wealth and military gear, voted for consuls and big decisions: war, peace, laws. It wasn't democracy as we know it. The rich held sway, their votes counting more. Still, this was radical. A city tossing out kings for a shared rule. A republic daring to balance power so no Tarquin could rise again. Romans swore oaths to this ideal, their pride swelling as they built something new. But trouble brewed fast, and the cracks showed early. Tarquin the Proud didn't slink away quietly. Exiled, he scrambled for allies, begging Etruscan cities like Veii and Tarquinii to back him. He'd ruled with their kin's influence, and now he wanted his crown back. Armies loomed. Etruscan warlord Lars Porsena marched on Rome, aiming to crush the upstart republic. Legend spins a wild tale. A Roman hero, Horatius Cocles, stood alone on the Pons Sublicius, that wooden bridge Ancus built, holding off Porsena's horde. Sword flashing, he fought as his comrades hacked the bridge behind him, collapsing it into the Tiber to save the city. Did it happen just like that? Maybe not. Stories grow tall, but Rome held, bloodied but unbowed. External threats circled like wolves. Etruscans, Sabines, and hill tribes tested the young republic, their spears glinting in the distance. Inside Rome, a deeper storm raged, class struggles that threatened to tear the city apart. The patricians, those elite families, gripped power, consulships, senate seats, priesthoods, all theirs. Below them, the plebeians, farmers, craftsmen, the bulk of Rome, felt the squeeze. They fought in armies, paid taxes, but got no say, often trapped in debt to rich landlords. Land was life, and patricians hoarded it, lending at brutal rates. Plebeians drowned in loans, some chained as debt slaves, their anger boiling. Around 494 BCE, the tension snapped. Plebeian soldiers, the backbone of Rome's defense, staged history's first recorded strike. They marched out, camping on the Sacred Mount, miles from the city, refusing to fight or work. No army, no Rome. Patricians panicked. The fix? A new office, tribunes of the plebs, elected by plebeians to protect their rights. At first, these men could veto laws or actions harming the poor. Their bodies sacrosanct. Harm a tribune, face death. It was a win, but the divide, patricians versus plebeians, simmered, a fault line for centuries. The republic flexed its muscle, but danger never faded. External foes kept coming. Latins, Aequi, Volsci, tribes from the hills, itching to raid or conquer. Rome fought back, small wins piling up. Around 496 BCE, at the Battle of Lake Regillus, Romans clashed with the Latin League, a band of nearby cities. Legend says the gods Castor and Pollux, divine horsemen, appeared to tip the fight. Rome triumphed, forcing uneasy alliances. The city's knack for survival shone: defeat a foe, then blend them in. But the plebeian fight raged on. By 451 BCE, they pushed for clarity. Laws were secret, twisted by patrician priests. The result? The 12 Tables, Rome's first written code, carved on bronze and posted in the budding forum. Harsh but public, they set rules: debt, marriage, crime, giving plebeians a glimpse of justice, though the rich still bent the scales. Rome's early republic was a gritty marvel. Consuls led, 2 men, 1 year, no kingly nonsense. The Senate guided, a patrician stronghold, while assemblies gave a nod to the people. Tribunes shielded the poor, a hard-won check on power. The city grew. Huts turned to homes. The Servian wall held firm, and the Tiber hummed with trade. Population crept up, maybe nearing 50,000, as Sabines, Latins, and others mixed in. But threats loomed large. Exiled Tarquin schemed, whispering to Etruscans for one last shot. Plebeians seethed, demanding more: land, votes, fairness. Battles flared, swords clashed with Volsci, Aequi, and more, testing Rome's nerve. This wasn't a smooth ride. It was a fight to define a new way. The Republic's birth reshaped Rome's soul. Lucretia's tragedy, her assault, her sacrifice, lit the fuse, toppling Tarquin and the monarchy in 509 BCE. Brutus and the rebels birthed a system to cage power. Consuls checked each other, the Senate steered, and assemblies voted, all to block a tyrant's return. It was bold, messy, brilliant. Rome, a city of hills and hustle, dared to govern itself. Yet class rifts gaped. Patricians hoarded, plebeians pushed back, tribunes their lifeline. Outside, enemies circled. Etruscans, Latins, hill tribes, hungry for weakness. Rome stood tough, but the road ahead bristled with danger. And what happened next would shock everyone. A young republic was about to face tests that had forged its legend. Section 5. Struggles and Triumphs. The Roman Republic was born in a blaze of rebellion, swapping kings for consuls and vowing no man would rule alone. But freedom came with a price. Rome faced battles within and beyond its walls, each one testing its grit. In this wild chapter, we're diving into the struggles and triumphs that forged the young republic. Plebeians, fed up with being trampled, staged a historic strike to claw out power. Rome racked up early wins, toppling a mighty rival and surviving a devastating sack, only to bounce back tougher. And here's the twist. Rome's knack for turning enemies into allies fueled its rise, setting the stage for something bigger. Buckle up. This is Rome fighting for its soul, and what happened next would shock everyone. Rome, in the early 5th century BCE, was no polished city, just a rugged sprawl of huts and stone across the 7 hills, with maybe 50,000 souls scraping by. The Tiber hummed with small-time trade, and the Servian wall stood guard, but tension crackled like a storm. The Republic's new system, 2 consuls elected yearly, a senate of patrician nobles, and assemblies for the people, promised balance. Yet, for most Romans, life was a grind. Plebeians, the farmers, craftsmen, and soldiers who kept Rome running, faced a raw deal. Patricians, the elite with old blood and big land, hogged power. Consulships, priesthoods, and senate seats were their game. Plebeians fought in wars, paid taxes, but had little say, often sinking into debt to rich landlords. Land meant survival, but patricians lent at crushing rates, seizing fields, or even chaining debtors as slaves. By 494 BCE, the plebeians had had enough. Their anger boiled over into a move so bold it shook Rome's core. Picture this. Plebeian soldiers, the muscle of Rome's army, dropped their spears and walked out. They trekked 3 miles to the Sacred Mount, a hill by the Anio River, and camped, refusing to fight or work. This wasn't just a protest. It was a gut punch. No soldiers, no defense, no workers, no crops. Rome, surrounded by foes like the Etruscans and hill tribes, faced ruin. Patricians scrambled, their power useless without the plebs. A deal was struck, and the plebeians won big. The creation of tribunes of the plebs, 2 elected officials, later up to 10, with a sacred duty to protect the common folk. These tribunes, chosen only by plebeians, had a killer power: the veto. One word, veto, meaning I forbid, could halt any law, consul's order, or senate plan harming the poor. Their bodies were sacrosanct. Touch a tribune, and you'd face divine wrath and death. This strike on the Sacred Mount wasn't just a win. It was a seismic shift. giving plebeians a shield against the elite. But the fight wasn't over. Class rifts still simmered, a spark ready to flare. While plebeians pushed for justice, Rome faced enemies itching to crush the upstart republic. The Etruscans, with their bronze-clad warriors and rich cities, loomed north. Latin and Sabine tribes, uneasy neighbors, raided from the east. Yet, Rome's early republic showed serious grit, racking up wins that put it on the map. Around 396 BCE, after a decade-long siege, Rome took down Veii, a powerhouse Etruscan city just 12 miles away. Veii was no pushover. Stone walls, skilled fighters, and wealth from trade made it a giant. Rome's generals, led by Marcus Furius Camillus, played the long game, cutting supplies and digging tunnels under the walls. When the city fell, Rome didn't just loot. It doubled its territory, grabbing Veii's fertile fields and swelling its manpower. Citizens moved in, blending with locals. A trick Rome perfected. Conquer, then absorb. This victory wasn't just a flex. It made neighbors think twice about crossing the Tiber. But triumph turned to terror in 390 BCE, when disaster struck like a thunderbolt. Celtic Gauls, fierce warriors from the north with wild hair and iron swords, swept down the peninsula. At the Allia River, just 11 miles from Rome, they smashed the Roman army in a single day. Panicked, the city lay open. No walls could stop the horde. Gauls stormed in, torching huts, looting homes, and turning Rome to ash. Most fled, but a stubborn few, led by nobles, holed up on the Capitoline Hill, the last bastion. Legend spins a wild tale. As Gauls crept up at night, sacred geese in Juno's temple honked, waking the defenders to repel the attack. True or not, the Capitoline held, but the city burned. The Gauls, loaded with gold, some say a hefty ransom, finally left, leaving Rome a smoldering wreck. This sack, a trauma etched in Roman memory, was the closest the Republic came to dying. Yet, Rome's spirit didn't break. It roared back. Rebuilding wasn't just about bricks. It was about defiance. Romans returned, hauling stone and timber, raising thicker walls around the 7 hills. The Servian Wall, beefed up with massive blocks, some still standing today, screamed resilience. Huts rose again, the Forum grew, and fields bloomed. Leaders like Camillus rallied the people, urging them not to abandon their home. The population, bruised but growing, maybe nearing 60,000, got to work. They rebuilt temples, like those to Jupiter and Juno, to thank the gods. This comeback wasn't just physical. Rome's knack for bouncing back shaped its psyche. The Gauls' raid taught a hard lesson. Never get soft. Rome doubled down on its army, drilling farmers into tighter legions, arming them with spears and shields. They vowed no enemy would ever breach the city again. This era of struggles and triumphs revealed Rome's secret sauce, absorbing enemies to fuel its rise. Veii's fall didn't just add land. It brought Etruscan skills, from pottery to drainage, into Rome's mix. Defeated tribes like the Latins and Sabines weren't crushed. They were folded in. Some got partial rights, others full citizenship, tying them to Rome's fate. Around 493 BCE, Rome formed the Latin League, a shaky alliance with nearby cities. When fights broke out, like at Lake Regillus in 496 BCE, Rome won, then offered terms. Join us, share the spoils, keep your ways. This wasn't kindness, it was cunning. By blending foes into friends, Rome built a network of loyal manpower, swelling its armies and taxes. Unlike the Greeks, who bickered in city-states, Rome grew by inclusion. A trick that'd carry it far. The plebeian push kept rolling too. By 471 BCE, they won the right to form their own assembly, the tribal assembly, voting by region, not wealth, a jab at patrician control. Around 451 BCE, the 12 tables went up, bronze laws in the forum, public for all to see. They were harsh. Debtors still faced chains, but transparent, curbing patrician tricks. Plebeians pressed for more, eyeing land reform and a consul's seat, but patricians dug in, guarding their edge. This class clash wasn't settled. It smoldered, a fire Rome would wrestle for centuries. Outside, the Volsci and Aequi, hill tribes, kept raiding, while Etruscans schemed. Rome fought them off. Small battles, big gains. Each win carved out more turf, from the Tiber to the Latin plains. These years, roughly 509 to 479 BCE, were Rome's crucible. The sacred Mount Strike gave plebeians tribunes, a veto to check power, a historic leap for the little guy. Veii's conquest doubled Rome's reach, proving it could outlast giants. The Gallic sack of 390 BCE nearly ended it all, but Rome rebuilt, its walls and will stronger. Every struggle, class fights, enemy raids honed Rome's edge. Its genius, turning outsiders in. Defeated Veii became Roman. Latin foes became allies. This wasn't just survival. It was growth. A city of maybe 80,000 by the century's end. Buzzing with Etruscan, Sabine, and Latin blood. The forum grew. The Senate schemed. And consuls marched. But trouble wasn't done. Class rifts and new foes loomed. And what happened next would shock everyone. Rome's rise was about to kick into high gear. Section 6. The Road to Empire. Rome's republic had fought tooth and nail through rebellion, class strife, and a devastating sack, each blow forging a tougher spirit. But now, the stakes explode into a high-octane race down the road to empire. A relentless charge where Rome seized Italy, outfoxed cunning Greeks, and stared down a war machine that nearly shattered its core. From Pyrrhus's hollow victories to Hannibal's rampaging elephants, Rome's triumphs were carved in blood and sweat. A young general's audacious comeback sealed its dominance, but the spoils, glittering wealth, endless slaves, and raw power cracked the Republic's foundation, threatening to unravel everything. Buckle up for a wild, heart-pounding ride through Rome's meteoric rise, where every step forward hit a dangerous trap, and what happened next would shock everyone. By the late 4th century BCE, Rome was no backwater hamlet. The Seven Hills teemed with life, perhaps 100,000 souls packed into a gritty sprawl of stone and timber. The Servian Wall, beefed up after the Gallic sack, loomed as a defiant shield, while the Forum buzzed with traders haggling over grain, wine, and bronze. Temples to Jupiter and Juno gleamed on the Capitoline, a nod to divine favor. The Republic system, 2 consuls elected yearly, a Senate stacked with patrician nobles, and plebeian tribunes wielding veto power, kept power in a tense balance, while legions of farmer soldiers, armed with spears and rectangular shields, drilled relentlessly. Rome had tamed nearby rivals like Veii and the Latin League, weaving them into a growing web of allies who supplied troops, taxes, and loyalty. Central Italy bowed to Rome's will, but the peninsula remained a chaotic mosaic of threats. Samnites lurked in the rugged Apennines. Etruscans clung to northern strongholds, and Greek cities shimmered along the southern coast, their wealth and culture a taunting challenge. These Greeks, part of Magna Graecia, were no easy prey. Rich from trade, steeped in art, and tied to distant Hellenistic powers like Macedon and Epirus. Rome's next moves would plunge it into a clash with a military genius and ignite a legend of Pyrrhic costs that still echoes today. The Samnites, fierce mountain warriors controlling vital passes in central Italy, were Rome's first hurdle. Around 326 BCE, the Samnite Wars erupted, three brutal rounds stretching over decades, each testing Rome's nerve and endurance. These weren't tidy battles. The Samnites fought like shadows, using rocky gorges and dense forests to ambush Roman columns. In 321 BCE, disaster struck at the Caudine Forks, a narrow pass where a Roman army blundered into a trap. Surrounded, with no escape, they surrendered, a gut-wrenching blow. The Samnites forced the Romans to strip to their tunics and crawl under a yoke of spears, a ritual of shame that seared Roman pride. Whispers of defeat spread, but Rome didn't crumble. Consuls rallied fresh troops, allies like the Latins pitched in, and the Republic's deep reserves of manpower kicked into gear. By 295 BCE, at Sentinum, Rome's legions faced a Samnite Gallic coalition in a massive clash. Roman discipline, tight ranks, pila javelins, and short swords held firm, outmaneuvering the enemy. By 290 BCE, the Samnites buckled, accepting Roman terms. Rome didn't just crush them. It offered partial citizenship, tying their lands and warriors to its own fate. This victory wasn't just about dirt. It locked central Italy under Rome's boot, proving the Republic could take a beating, shake it off, and come back swinging. But the South, with its Greek riches, was calling, and Rome was about to face a foe unlike any before. Trouble flared in Magna Graecia, the Greek colonies dotting Italy's southern coast. Cities like Tarentum, Croton, and Thurii, flush with olive oil, wine, and marble temples. Tarentum, a port city sparkling with wealth, watched Rome's rise with growing dread. Its people, proud of their Hellenistic roots, boasted fleets and trade routes stretching to Greece itself. In 282 BCE, a spark ignited war. Roman ships, scouting near Tarentum's waters, were sunk by Greek warships, their crews slaughtered or enslaved. Tarentum's leaders, defiant and insulted, declared war, but they knew Rome's legions were no joke. They sent a desperate plea across the sea to Pyrrhus, king of Epirus in Greece, a name that'd soon haunt Roman nightmares. Pyrrhus wasn't just a king, he was a military prodigy, a cousin of Alexander the Great, with a hunger for conquest and a flair for the dramatic. In 280 BCE, he landed in Italy with 25,000 elite troops, phalanxes of spearmen, crack cavalry, and a terrifying new weapon, war elephants. These towering beasts, draped in armor, with tusks and trunks swinging, were a psychological hammer Rome had never faced. Pyrrhus aimed to carve a Western empire, starting with Rome's scalp. At Heraclea in 280 BCE, Pyrrhus met Rome's legions head-on. His elephants charged, trampling soldiers, their roars shattering Roman nerve. His phalanx, a wall of long spears, gouged deep while cavalry swept the flanks. Rome lost thousands. Blood soaked the field, but fought with a raw ferocity that stunned Pyrrhus. Roman legions, disciplined and stubborn, reformed ranks even as elephants rampaged. Pyrrhus won, but the cost was savage. His best troops, seasoned men from Greece, lay dead, irreplaceable so far from home. In 279 BCE, at Asculum, the story repeated. Pyrrhus's elephants and spearmen ground out another win, but his army bled out. Elite units gutted, supplies dwindling. Rome, tapping its Italian allies, Latins, Sabines, even former foes like the Samnites churned out fresh legions, their numbers seemingly endless. "If I win one more battle like this," Pyrrhus reportedly sighed, "I'll be ruined." The term Pyrrhic victory was born, a win so costly it's a death sentence. Restless, Pyrrhus pivoted to Sicily, clashing with Carthage, but Rome's dogged resistance wore him down. In 275 BCE at Beneventum, Rome flipped the script. Roman troops, learning fast, used javelins and fire to spook Pyrrhus's elephants, sending them crashing into his own lines. Defeated, Pyrrhus sailed back to Greece, a broken man, leaving Tarentum to fall in 272 BCE. Rome's cunning, bottomless manpower, loyal allies, sheer stubbornness, outsmarted a genius, claiming southern Italy and its Greek riches. This iron grip on Italy, Etruscans, Samnites, Greeks, all under Rome's thumb, made the Republic a heavyweight, but a darker storm brewed across the sea. Carthage, a maritime empire sprawling from North Africa to Spain and Sicily. By 264 BCE, Rome's reach grazed Sicily, a fertile island split between Greek cities and Carthaginian ports. A squabble over Messana, a Sicilian town held by rogue mercenaries, lit the fuse for the First Punic War, a 23-year grind that had pushed Rome to its limits. Carthage was a naval titan, its sleek quinqueremes, warships with 5 rows of oars, ruling the Mediterranean. Rome, a land power with no navy, faced a steep climb. But Romans don't flinch. They salvaged a wrecked Carthaginian ship, reverse-engineered it, and built a fleet from scratch, training farmers to row on wooden mock-ups. They added a brutal twist: the corvus, a spiked boarding bridge that crashed onto enemy decks, letting Roman soldiers turn sea battles into land-style brawls. Early wins came hard. Battles like Mylae in 260 BCE saw Roman grit prevail. But storms wrecked fleets, drowning thousands. Carthage's admiral struck back, sinking Roman ships off Sicily's coast. Rome bled men and coin, taxing citizens and allies to keep fighting. By 241 BCE, after relentless pushes, Rome won a decisive naval clash at the Aegae's Islands, cutting Carthage's supply lines. Exhausted, Carthage sued for peace, ceding Sicily and paying a crushing indemnity. This war stretched Rome thin. New taxes, endless recruits, naval gambles. But it proved the Republic could slug it out with giants and come out on top, claiming Sicily as its first overseas prize. The Second Punic War, erupting in 218 BCE, was a nightmare that nearly ended Rome. Carthage's new star was Hannibal Barca, a 29-year-old general with a blood oath to destroy Rome. Raised on tales of the First War's humiliation, Hannibal was a master strategist, bold and ruthless. From his base in Spain, he launched an insane plan: invade Italy itself. In 218 BCE, he led 50,000 men, 9,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants across the Alps, a frozen hell of snow, avalanches, and hostile tribes. Half his army perished. Elephants froze, men starved. But Hannibal emerged in northern Italy, a phantom Rome couldn't ignore. At Trebia in 218 BCE, he ambushed a Roman army in fog, slaughtering 20,000. In 217 BCE, at Lake Trasimene, he lured another legion into a trap, killing 15,000, including a consul. Then in 216 BCE came Cannae, history's bloodiest day. Hannibal's 50,000 troops faced 80,000 Romans. Using a genius double envelopment, he baited Rome's center, then crushed it with cavalry and infantry, killing perhaps 50,000 in hours. Elephants charged, Swords flashed, and Roman blood soaked the earth. Hannibal roamed Italy, wooing Rome's allies. Some, like Capua, defected. Panic seized Rome. Temples overflowed. Rumors of human sacrifices swirled, and the Senate banned wailing to keep morale up. Hannibal's genius was unmatched, but Rome's spirit didn't break. The Senate, grim but resolute, raised new armies. Teens, freed slaves, even criminals drafted in. General Quintus Fabius Maximus, dubbed the Delayer, played it smart, avoiding big battles, harrying Hannibal's supply lines with guerrilla tactics. Hannibal's elephants died, his men starved, and most of Rome's allies held firm. Their loyalty a wall he couldn't breach. Meanwhile, a young general, Publius Cornelius Scipio, saw the bigger picture. While Hannibal ravaged Italy, Scipio struck Carthage's base in Spain, capturing key cities like New Carthage by 206 BCE. In 204 BCE, he landed in North Africa, threatening Carthage's heart. Hannibal was recalled, and in 202 BCE, at Zama, the Titans clashed. Scipio, now 34, outsmarted Hannibal, using cavalry feints and elephant traps to win the day. Named Africanus, he ended the war. Carthage surrendered, losing its navy, overseas territories, and freedom, reduced to a Roman puppet. Rome ruled the western Mediterranean, its legions unmatched, its web of allies sprawling from Spain to Sicily. Victory unleashed a tidal wave of wealth and slaves. Gold, silver, grain, and art flooded in from Sicily, Spain, and Africa. Senators built lavish villas, their tables groaning with exotic wines and spices. Slaves, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, from defeated lands, worked vast latifundia, mega farms that churned out grain for profit. Small farmers, Rome's backbone, got squeezed out, their plots gobbled by rich estates. Displaced, they flocked to Rome, swelling the city to perhaps 150,000. A chaotic mix of jobless plebs, rich elites, and foreign traders. The Forum glittered with new temples, vows kept to Jupiter for victory, while markets bustled with Punic loot. But cracks spiderwebbed through the Republic. Landless plebeians, angry and idle, sparked unrest, demanding reform. By 287 BCE, the Lex Hortensia made plebeian votes binding, a hard-won gain, but patricians still dominated the Senate, skimming war spoils with greasy fingers. Corruption crept in. Governors fleeced new provinces. Senators hoarded wealth. Generals like Scipio, hailed as gods, commanded loyal armies, raising a chilling question. What if one turned on Rome? The Republic's system, built for a small city-state, groaned under the weight of empire, its balance tilting dangerously. Rome's road to empire was a brutal masterpiece. Outsmarting purists showed its grit, lose battles, win wars by sheer will. The Samnite Wars forged an Italian alliance, a manpower juggernaut. The Punic Wars, from naval gambles to Hannibal's rampage, pushed Rome to the edge, but Scipio's triumph made it a colossus. Italy was Rome's. Etruscans, Samnites, Greeks folded in, their sons marching in legions, their taxes filling Rome's coffers. By 200 BCE, Rome's gaze shifted east, where Hellenistic kingdoms like Macedon glittered with promise. But the cost was steep. Wealth warped society, slaves upended farms, and the Republic's checks, consuls, senate, tribunes, wobbled under new pressures. Class rifts deepened. Plebeians versus patricians. Urban poor versus rural lords. Ambitious generals cast long shadows, their legions more loyal to them than to Rome. The empire was rising, but its heart was fracturing, and what happened next would shock everyone. A republic built on balance was about to face its greatest test. Section 7. The Republic's Fall. Rome's road to empire was paved with blood, brains, and a knack for turning enemies into allies. By 200 BCE, the Republic ruled the Mediterranean, its legions crushing Carthage and eyeing eastern kingdoms. But victory came with a poison pill. Wealth skewed society, slaves upended farms, and ambitious generals loomed large. Now, we dive into the Republic's fall, a chaotic spiral of political murders, civil war, and power grabs that shattered Rome's balance. From Sulla's march on the city to Caesar's rise and fall, and a cunning young man's play to seize it all, this is Rome eating itself alive. Buckle up. The Republic's end is a wild, shocking ride, and what happened next would change the world. Picture Rome in the 2nd century BCE, a glittering hub of maybe 200,000 people, its forum packed with marble temples, bustling markets, and scheming senators. The 7 hills hum with life. Artisans craft bronze, traders hawk Punic gold, and legions drill beyond the Servian wall. The Republic's system, 2 consuls elected yearly, a senate of rich patricians and rising plebeians, tribunes with veto power, still ticks, but it's creaking. Conquests in Spain, Sicily, and Greece flood Rome with loot, silver, grain, and slaves by the million. These captives work vast estates, latifundia, owned by senators and generals, pushing small farmers off their land. Displaced plebs crowd the city, jobless and angry, while the rich flaunt villas and imported wine. The Senate, once a council of elders, grows corrupt, skimming provincial taxes and war spoils. Generals, hailed as heroes, command armies loyal to them, not Rome. The Republic, built for a city-state, buckles under the empire's weight. And the first cracks turn bloody. Enter the Gracchi brothers, 2 plebeian tribunes who lit a fuse. In 133 BCE, Tiberius Gracchus, young and fiery, saw the rot. Landless farmers, rich estates, a republic losing its soul. He proposed a law to cap land ownership, redistributing excess to the poor, citing old Roman rules. The Senate, packed with land barons, raged. Tiberius pushed his bill through the plebeian assembly, bypassing the Senate, a bold, legal move, but a slap to tradition. Senators struck back, branding him a wannabe king. During a riot, a mob of senators and their thugs clubbed Tiberius and 300 supporters to death, their bodies dumped in the Tiber. This was new. Political murder, not war, staining Rome's streets. A decade later, in 121 BCE, Tiberius's brother Gaius tried again, pushing land reform, grain subsidies, and jury rights for non-senators. The Senate, spooked, declared a state of emergency, and Gaius met the same fate, hunted down, dead with thousands of followers. The Gracchi's blood marked a turning point. Rome's elite would kill to keep power, and the Republic's ideals, balance, consensus, started to rot. Chaos deepened as generals flexed muscle. In 107 BCE, Gaius Marius, a plebeian war hero, shook things up. Elected consul, he reformed the army, ditching landowning recruits for landless volunteers. Poor men lured by pay and loot, loyal to their general, not the Senate. Marius's legions, professional and fierce, smashed Numidian rebels in Africa and Germanic tribes in Gaul, saving Italy from invasion. He won 5 consulships, a record, but his power scared the elite. Enter Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a patrician rival with his own army. In 88 BCE, the Senate picked Sulla to lead a juicy war against Mithridates, a rich eastern king. But Marius's allies, using tribunes, snatched the command for him. Sulla, livid, did the unthinkable. He marched his legions on Rome itself. No Roman had ever turned an army on the city until now. Sulla stormed in, killed Marius's men, and reclaimed his command, setting a chilling precedent. Might trumped law. Marius struck back, seizing Rome while Sulla fought east. Blood flowed, executions, riots, a city at war with itself. When Sulla returned in 83 BCE, flush with victories and loot, he crushed Marius's faction in a brutal civil war. Named dictator, an emergency role with no term limit, he unleashed terror. Sulla's proscription lists named enemies, senators, knights, anyone he disliked, for execution, their lands and wealth seized. Thousands died, their heads spiked in the forum, a grim warning. Sulla reshaped Rome, boosting the Senate's power, curbing tribunes, and banning army reforms like Marius's. In 79 BCE, he retired, thinking he'd saved the Republic. He hadn't. His march showed generals they could take Rome by force, and his purges taught vengeance over compromise. The Republic's heart was bleeding. Amid this mess, new players rose. Gnaeus Pompeius, called Pompey, a young general, won fame crushing rebels and pirates, his legions adoring him. Marcus Licinius Crassus, Rome's richest man, bankrolled campaigns and crushed Spartacus's slave revolt in 71 BCE, crucifying 6,000 along the Appian Way. Then came Gaius Julius Caesar, a patrician with charm, brains, and ruthless ambition. In 60 BCE, these three formed the first triumvirate, a secret pact to dominate Rome. Pompey brought military clout, Crassus cash, and Caesar political savvy. They rigged elections, bribed senators, and sidestepped the Senate, running Rome like a cartel. Caesar, elected consul in 59 BCE, grabbed a plum post, governor of Gaul. From 58 to 50 BCE, he waged dazzling campaigns, conquering modern France and raiding Britain. His dispatches, written in crisp Latin, made him a hero in Rome's streets, while his legions, battle-hardened loyal, grew rich on Gallic loot. Caesar's star soared, but the triumvirate frayed. Crassus died fighting Parthians in 53 BCE, and Pompey, cozying up to the Senate, turned on Caesar. In 49 BCE, the Senate, fearing Caesar's power, ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen, easy prey for prosecution. Caesar faced a choice: obey and risk ruin, or defy and spark war. He chose war, crossing the Rubicon River with his legions, a tiny stream marking Gaul's border. "The die is cast," he said, knowing there was no turning back. This bold move, January 49 BCE, ignited civil war. Caesar's march was lightning fast. Pompey and the Senate fled to Greece, stunned by his speed. Caesar chased, winning allies and cities. In 48 BCE, at Pharsalus, Caesar's smaller army outsmarted Pompey's larger force, a masterclass in tactics. Pompey fled to Egypt, only to be beheaded by local schemers. Caesar followed, tangled with Cleopatra, and crushed Pompey's loyalists in Africa and Spain. By 45 BCE, he was Rome's undisputed boss, named dictator for life, a king in all but name. Caesar's rule was dazzling, but dangerous. He reformed the calendar, creating the Julian system with 365 days, still our blueprint. He planned new wars, rebuilt Rome with grand projects, and settled veterans on land. But his power, lifetime dictatorship, godlike honors like statues and a throne, spooked Republicans. Was he aiming for monarchy, the ultimate taboo? On March 15, 44 BCE, the Ides of March, Caesar entered the Senate, unaware of a plot. Led by Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius, senators who once backed him, a gang of 60 stabbed him 23 times at the foot of Pompey's statue. Caesar fell, blood pooling. His last words, maybe "et tu, brute," a myth, but his shock was real. The assassins thought they'd saved the Republic, but they'd lit a bigger fire. Chaos erupted. Caesar's death left a vacuum, and Rome teetered. His heir, Gaius Octavius, an 18-year-old nobody, stepped up. Named in Caesar's will, Octavius, soon called Octavian, was slim, sickly, but whip-smart. He played the game like a master, rallying Caesar's veterans and plebs who loved their fallen hero. Octavian joined forces with Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general, and Lepidus, a rich ally, forming the Second Triumvirate in 43 BCE. This wasn't a pact. It was a junta, legal but ruthless. They prescribed enemies, thousands, including Cicero, Rome's greatest orator, beheaded for his anti-Antony speeches. In 42 BCE, at Philippi, they crushed Brutus and Cassius, who'd fled east. The assassins were dead, but the triumvirs turned on each other. Lepidus faded, and Antony, ruling the east, linked up with Cleopatra, Egypt's queen, their romance and ambition a scandal in Rome. Octavian, holding the west, played the long game, painting Antony as a traitor seduced by a foreign queen. In 31 BCE, the showdown came at Actium, a naval battle off Greece. Octavian's fleet, led by Agrippa, outmaneuvered Antony and Cleopatra's ships. The lovers fled to Egypt, where, in 30 BCE, they took their lives. Antony by sword, Cleopatra by snakebite, legend says. Octavian stood alone, Rome's master at 33. He didn't rush. He was too clever. Instead of claiming a crown, he posed as a restorer, returning power to the Senate in 27 BCE. Grateful senators named him Augustus, a title dripping with reverence, and gave him control of key provinces and armies. The Republic was dead in all but name. Augustus was Rome's first emperor, cloaked in republican robes. His rise, from Caesar's shadow to sole ruler, was a master class in patience and power. The Republic's fall was a tragedy of ambition and broken trust. Political murders, gracchi, then thousands, eroded consensus. Generals like Sulla and Caesar marched on Rome, proving might trumped law. Caesar's rise, from Gaul's conqueror to dictator, sparked hope and fear, ending in his blood. Octavian's grab, cunning and calculated, buried the Republic under an empire's weight. By 27 before Common Era, Rome's population, maybe 250,000, spanned a vast domain, but its soul, consuls, tribunes, balance, was gone. Class rifts, wealth gaps, and loyal armies tore it apart. Augustus's reign promised peace, but at a cost. Freedom swapped for stability. And what happened next would shock everyone. A new era dawned, and Rome's empire was about to reshape the world. Conclusion. What a wild ride Rome's story has been. A saga so gripping, it feels like a blockbuster spun from myth, blood, and ambition. From a muddy village on the Tiber's banks, sparked by a warrior's ruthless dream, to a sprawling empire under Augustus's cunning grip. Rome's journey is packed with shocking twists, epic battles, and a legacy that refuses to fade. We've seen brothers clash, cities burn, and a republic rise and crumble under its own weight. But as we wrap this tale, here's a thought to chew on. Did Rome ever truly fall? Or does its spirit still pulse in our laws, roads, and dreams? Stick around, because this conclusion isn't just a recap. It's a challenge to see how Rome's ancient story shapes your world today. Let's rewind and trace this incredible arc. Rome began in 753 before the Common Era, steeped in legend, a tale of twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, born to a virgin and a war god, tossed into the Tiber to die. Saved by fate and a shepherd's care, they grew fierce, only for Romulus to slay his twin in a brutal power grab, founding Rome on the Palatine Hill. This wasn't a fairy tale start. It was raw, bloody, and set the tone for a city unafraid to fight dirty. Romulus's early hustle turned a cluster of huts into a haven for outcasts, swelling Rome's ranks with exiles and rebels. His daring abduction of Sabine women, shocking, controversial, secured a future, blending bloodlines and forging a tribe ready to scrap. Surrounded by Etruscan and Greek giants, Rome's odds were grim, but its grit was unmatched. The Age of Kings, spanning nearly 250 years, transformed this spec into a regional player. 7 monarchs, each with their flair, built Rome's bones. Numa Pompilius wove sacred rites, tying the city to the gods with priests and temples. Tullus Hostilius waged wars, absorbing Alba Longa, while Ancus Marcius spanned the Tiber with Rome's first bridge, linking trade and defense. Tarquinius Priscus drained swamps, planting the Forum's seed, and Servius Tullius walled the 7 hills, organizing citizens into a voting machine. But Tarquin the Proud's tyranny, capped by the tragic assault on Lucretia, sparked a rebellion in 509 before the Common Era, toppling the monarchy. Rome's kings had laid a foundation: religion, war, engineering. But their fall birthed something bolder: a republic. That republic, a daring experiment, swapped crowns for consuls, splitting power to block any one-man rule. 2 leaders, elected yearly, a senate of nobles, and assemblies gave Rome a new pulse. But trouble brewed fast. Plebeians, the working backbone, struck on the Sacred Mount in 494 before the Common Era, winning tribunes with veto power, a historic jab at patrician control. Rome racked up early wins, conquering Etruscan Veii in 396 BCE, doubling its turf and surviving a Celtic sack in 390 BCE, rebuilding with thicker walls. Its genius? Absorbing foes, Latins, Sabines, Etruscans, into a growing alliance, fueling its rise with their men and taxes. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome tightened its grip on Italy, outsmarting Greek king Pyrrhus, whose Pyrrhic victories bled him dry by 275 before the Common Era. The Punic Wars pushed Rome to the brink. Hannibal's elephants and Cannae's slaughter in 216. Before the Common Era nearly broke it, but Scipio, Africanus's comeback at Zama in 202. Before the Common Era made Rome a Mediterranean titan. Victory brought wealth and slaves, but also cracks. Landless farmers flooded the city, senators grew corrupt, and generals like Sulla marched on Rome itself in 88 before the Common Era, setting a deadly precedent. The Gracchi brothers' murders in 133 and 121 BCE showed that politics could turn lethal. Julius Caesar's rise, conquering Gaul, crossing the Rubicon in 49 before the Common Era, ignited civil war, ending with his dictatorship and brutal assassination in 44 before the Common Era. From the chaos, young Octavian, renamed Augustus, outplayed rivals like Antony and Cleopatra, seizing power by 27 before the Common Era. The Republic was dead, cloaked in an empire's robes, with Augustus as Rome's first emperor. This wild ride, from a twin's blood to an empire's dawn, spanned 7 centuries, turning a village of maybe 1,000 into a metropolis of 250,000. ruling lands from Spain to Syria. So, did Rome fall? The traditional story points to 476 CE, when a Germanic warlord deposed the last Western emperor, Romulus Augustulus. Barbarians, Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths carved up the West, sacking Rome in 410 and 455 CE. The Eastern Empire, later called Byzantine, endured until 1453, but the West seemed to vanish. Yet that's only half the tale. Rome didn't just collapse, it transformed, its legacy woven into the fabric of our world. Let's unpack this twist. Rome's fall wasn't an end, but a shift, and its fingerprints are everywhere, shaping how we live, think, and dream today. Start with law, Rome's gift to civilization. The 12 Tables of 451 BCE, crude but public, set a precedent. Laws apply to all, not just the elite. Over centuries, Roman jurists refined this into a system of contracts, property, and justice. Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis, compiled in the 6th century CE, preserved these ideas, influencing Europe's civil law tradition, from France to Latin America. Concepts like innocent until proven guilty, intent in crimes, and legal representation, Roman roots. Even English common law, distinct but cross-pollinated, borrows Roman ideas. Every courtroom, every contract you sign carries Rome's shadow. Think about that next time you're signing a lease or scrolling through terms of service. Then there's infrastructure. Rome's roads, aqueducts, and cities still stun. Over 250,000 miles of roads, some paved with stone, linked the empire, moving legions, goods, and ideas. Many, like the Appian Way, still exist, their roots under modern highways. Aqueducts, like Lisbon's or Segovia's, carried water to cities into the 20th century, their arches a testament to Roman engineering. Concrete, a Roman invention, built the Pantheon's dome, standing 2,000 years later, inspiring architects from Renaissance Florence to Washington, D.C. Your city's grid, your tap water, even the bridges you cross, Rome's practical genius laid the blueprint. Next time you're stuck in traffic, consider Roman roads got you there. Language, Latin, the tongue of Tiber farmers, became the West's lingua franca. It birthed the Romance languages, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, Romanian, spoken by nearly 1 billion today. English, though Germanic, pulls 60% of its words from Latin, especially in law, science, and government. Words like justice, Senate, Constitution, pure Rome. Even your calendar, January from Janus, July from Julius Caesar, ticks to a Roman beat. Every time you speak, write, or check the date, Rome's in your mouth, whispering its legacy. Government and citizenship. Rome's republic, with its checks, consuls, senate, tribunes, inspired modern systems. America's founders, like Jefferson and Madison, studied Rome, crafting a senate, a veto, and term limits to dodge tyranny. Rome's idea of citizenship, extended to conquered peoples, was radical. Identity tied to law, not blood. By 212 CE, the Edict of Caracalla granted citizenship to all free men in the empire, a model of inclusion that echoes in today's debates on belonging. Your passport, your vote, your civic pride? Rome's ghost nods in approval. Religion, too, bears Rome's mark. Christianity, born under Augustus, spread on Roman roads, its dioceses mirroring imperial provinces. The Catholic Church adopted Rome's structure: bishops, a Pontifex Maximus Pope, Latin liturgy. Even after the empire's fall, the Church preserved Roman law, texts, and order, bridging the medieval world. Protestantism, Islam, and secular ethics all grappled with Rome's moral framework. Whether you pray, meditate, or ponder ethics, Rome's influence lingers, shaping how we seek meaning. Art and culture, Roman statues, mosaics, and epics like Virgil's Aeneid set standards. Renaissance artists, Michelangelo, Raphael, revived Roman realism, their works in St. Peter's echoing the Pantheon. Shakespeare's plays, steeped in Roman tales, owe a debt to Livy and Plutarch. Even Hollywood's blockbusters, gladiator flicks, toga dramas, lean on Rome's grandeur. Your Netflix queue, your museum visits, your love for epic stories. Rome's DNA runs through them. But Rome's legacy isn't just concrete, it's a mindset. The Republic's fall showed how ambition, greed, and division can topple even the strongest systems. Sulla's march, Caesar's Rubicon, Augustus's power grab warn us. Democracy is fragile when trust erodes. Yet Rome's resilience, rebuilding after sacks, absorbing foes, adapting to empire, inspires. It's a reminder to balance power, include outsiders, and endure setbacks. Today's global challenges, inequality, migration, political strife, echo Rome's struggles. How we navigate them might hinge on lessons from a city that rose, fell, and never truly vanished. So, did Rome fall? Yes, the Western Empire faded in 476 CE, its last emperor a footnote. But no, Rome lives in our laws, from contracts to constitutions, in our roads, from highways to aqueducts, in our words, from Senate to July, in our faith, from cathedrals to ethics, and in our dreams, from epic films to civic ideals. The Eastern Empire, Byzantine Rome, carried the torch until 1453, preserving Roman law and Greek texts that sparked the Renaissance. Ottoman sultans, Russian czars, even modern states claimed Rome's mantle, chasing its eternal aura. Rome didn't die. It morphed, its ideas flowing like the Tiber through time. Now, reflect. How does Rome shape your world? Every time you vote, you echo Roman assemblies. Every law you follow, every bridge you cross, every word you speak carries Rome's weight. But it's deeper. Rome's story asks what you'd fight for. Freedom, like the plebeians on the Sacred Mount. Justice, like Lucretia's sacrifice. Power, like Caesar's gamble. Or stability, like Augustus's empire. Rome's wild ride, from a twin's blood to a vast dominion, forces us to face our own ambitions, divisions, and dreams. Its triumphs, laws, roads, inclusion, show humanity's heights. Its fall, murder, war, tyranny, warns of our depths. As you sit with this, imagine Rome's hills at dusk, the Tiber glinting under stars that shone on Romulus, Caesar, and Augustus. Those stars still shine on us, linking us to a city that dared to dream big, fought hard, and left a mark time can't erase. Rome's story isn't just history, it's a mirror. What do you see in it? How will you shape your world? Knowing Rome's legacy runs through it. The eternal city's tale ends here, but its question lingers. What's your next move? Stick with that thought because Rome's spirit, bold, messy, enduring, is alive in you, and what you do next might just shock everyone.